Moving on from grammar, but really keeping things kind of the same in terms of keeping things real, keeping English real. I think that's always the most important thing, whatever kind of aspect of English we're teaching, keeping it, in a realistic context. And this is where CLIL really comes into play here. CLIL, of course, is something that it's not something completely new. It wasn't discovered yesterday. It's been around for some time. And what has happened is it's gained a lot more attention, something of a resurgence in recent years. I think really because of the international nature of English and how it's used across the world in employment, in higher education. Have a lot of students, especially in the UK. There are thousands, literally thousands of foreign students coming from abroad to study in the UK, for example, in UK companies. And across the world using English. Okay, so this is something that has really led to more focus on, the communicative approach, keeping English real, things like CLIL, for example. And I really want to focus on CLIL with you today and how it's used, what it is, how it can be useful for the students, and how we can actually use it inside a CLIL lesson. For example, again, using practical strategies and tips. Okay, so what I'd like to do first, because I think that there is often some kind of confusion or maybe even uncertainty about what CLIL actually is. There have been a few misconceptions. There is some room for doubt here. So the first thing really I want to ask you is, what does CLIL stand for? What does CLIL actually stand for? What does it mean? To make things a bit easier, I've given you 3 options here. Okay, so option A, CLIL is context and learning in language. Option B, CLIL is content and language integrated learning. And C, CLIL is communication learning integrated lessons. Okay, just have a quick look. Which option do you think is CLIL? Okay, so the majority, I can see some B's and C's. Nobody has said A. Okay, now I can tell you that majority of you have been writing B, and you would be correct in that case. Okay, CLIL is option B. It stands for content and language integrated learning. Okay, now what do we mean by content? Language we can kind of work out. What do we mean by content? By content, we're talking about subject content. So different subjects from across the curriculum, okay, different topics from different subjects that are connected with the target language, which is English in this case. Okay, these are integrated together inside the learning process. Okay, so students basically, in a very simple way of explaining things, students are using language to explore different subjects from across the curriculum, okay? Or they're exploring different subjects from across the curriculum in a foreign language, okay? Now, here we have the more kind of professional definition of CLIL, okay? This comes from David Marsh. David Marsh is actually one of the key figureheads in CLIL, actually, one of the pioneers of CLIL, someone that really brought it to the forefront in education when it first began. I was lucky enough to actually see one of his talks in Spain, in Tisol, Spain, a few years ago on CLIL, and it was a fantastic talk as well. How we can define CLIL, according to David Marsh, is that CLIL refers to situations where subjects or parts of subjects are taught through a foreign language with dual focused aims. Okay, so there are 2 aims here. Firstly, for learning the subject, okay, whether that be history, geography, art, design, technology, computing, something like that, and simultaneously the learning of a foreign language. Okay, so we have 2 things there, the content and the language that are being learned at the same time. Okay, this is why we mentioned the dual focused aims. We have 2 aims to, of course, develop our language skills on one side, but also to build up our general knowledge or knowledge of the topic or the subject that we are studying at the same time. Now, why CLIL? Why has CLIL become so popular? Why would it be beneficial to use CLIL, and how is it different from a traditional classroom? Well, first of all, I did mention this earlier. Looking at CLIL in terms of language and content, English as an international language, it really helps students to prepare for future studies or working life. When we're teaching general English, of course, students need general English. Okay, they need to develop their general English skills, but at the same time, students also need to develop a wider range of skills, 21st century skills, research skills, communication skills, for example, critical thinking skills, general knowledge, maybe things like being able to analyze information, to be able to infer meaning, to be able to interpret and maybe evaluate and contrast different kinds of material. For example, this is where CLIL comes in, because it allows students this kind of option to explore different content that they wouldn't normally explore inside an English classroom. For example, and the skills that they can get for that can be very useful in academic studies in university, when students are maybe studying or writing academic papers, for example, or in their working life. They may need the skills that they have in CLIL for their working life, communication in the workplace, for example, or research projects, these kinds of things. The second part is the diversity of methods. Okay. So when we're talking about CLIL, we need to kind of follow a different approach than we would normally do in the just standard English classroom. Okay, we need to kind of be able to balance content with the language learning. I'm going to talk about that in a few moments. But what CLIL gives us, it gives us this diversity. So students will be, through content, through different subjects, as well as the language, they will be introduced to maybe different ways of learning things. Okay, there could be some technology used in the classroom, some research, maybe some documentary style videos, for example, the opportunity for them to put together a presentation. For example, there are much more diverse methods in order to also include subject content into the language class. You'll also need to use a variety of different things to do that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that a bit later, but what the students get, what the teachers get, what the schools get is a much more diverse classroom, more opportunities to learn things in different ways, more opportunities to use different materials that students wouldn't maybe usually encounter in the classroom, interesting topics maybe that students wouldn't associate with English as well. So these are things that we can also rely on with CLIL. Also, we have bilingualism promoted. Students are seeing that English isn't just something that we study inside the English classroom. English gives us a window to the outside world. We can see English is used in a wide range of different areas, not just the classroom. It can be used everywhere. And through this, we're getting students to really think about English as a language for communication, expanding their horizons, giving them the opportunity to see how English can be used in any kind of setting, for example, whether that be academic or in an employment setting, for example. And this can be highly motivating for students, having a wide range of different topics, interesting material that they haven't seen before, the opportunity to see how English is used in different areas of life, for example, interacting with technology, doing project work. This can be highly motivating for students. Okay, and finally, something I want to really focus on, the idea here of BICS and CALP. Okay, don't worry if you don't know what these mean. I'm going to explain what they mean, but these are basically two very important things that we need to develop, or students need to develop through their academic life at school. Okay, let's have a look at the next slide and we can explain this a little bit more. So BICS basically stands for Basic Interpersonal Skills. Okay, these are the language skills that students are learning for everyday or face-to-face interactions, okay? Being able to communicate in the playground, as we saw in the previous session, through the grammar lesson, being able to talk to your friend in the playground, ask them what they're going to do at the weekend, make plans for the weekend to meet up or something like that. These are what we would call basic interpersonal skills, okay? Being able to conduct and maintain social interactions, okay? Using language appropriately, correctly, of course. These are typically cognitively undemanding. It's just social interaction that we use on a daily basis. We don't really need to think that much about these conversations, okay? These are the way that we interact on a daily basis with other people, okay? On the phone, in the playground, at school, at home, for example. Okay, and these skills are developed first by students. What we also need to develop with students is, of course, the next kind of range of skills, which is the cognitive academic language proficiency, or CALP for the abbreviation of that. This is more academic language, academic skills that help students to develop these academic skills that they need in the future, okay? Being able to analyze things, okay? Being able to deduct, infer, being able to study content and make a decision or make a judgment on that. Typically, CALP, or cognitive academic language proficiency, these kinds of lessons, or the content of this, is normally a lot more abstract and focuses more on specialized vocabulary, okay? You may see vocabulary that is not typical of a general English lesson, for example, but this vocabulary, the specialized vocabulary, can help students, again, in academic study, okay? If they're studying something specific, if they're writing a paper, they need to have this kind of specialized vocabulary, or in the work setting as well, if they're going into a professional work setting. They also need to have the analytical skills, of course, to be able to write essays, to be able to plan, prepare things, give presentations, project work, this kind of thing. And generally, this takes a lot longer to develop, of course, because it's a lot more complex. What CLIL does, it brings both together. It allows students to, of course, focus on language, okay, which is important. As English teachers, our main focus is language, but at the same time, through this kind of, let's say, this kind of injection of content, we can also, it gives us the opportunity to work on maybe some more abstract topics. It gives us the opportunity to work on maybe some more advanced vocabulary that can be useful for them later on in life, through academic study, through work, for example. Okay, now the main question, really, the main challenge that we face as teachers is what kind of CLIL to teach. There are two main types of CLIL, okay, and this problem really comes around because when we're teaching CLIL, of course, we're not just teaching language, we're not just teaching a subject, we're balancing them together, okay? So how much emphasis do we need on one or the other? Now, if I'm a language teacher, if I'm an English teacher, and I'm teaching a CLIL lesson on geography, I'm not a geography teacher. I'm not an expert in geography. How do I kind of balance what I'm doing in the lesson? Because the students need to be working on language, but they also need to be working on the content as well. So there are two kind of main approaches to CLIL teaching. Okay, the first of these is hard CLIL. Okay, this is, if we think of CLIL as like a set of scales, okay, we have content and language on one side. In hard CLIL, the content is kind of a lot heavier than the language, okay? So the content kind of drives the lesson, okay? And it weighs down. The language is something more of the secondary kind of part of the lesson, okay? So the definition here, the content-driven approach, okay, so hard CLIL, it means that the subject content is given the primary focus, okay? So our main idea here is to teach the subject, then the language comes in. So an example of hard CLIL, okay, and this is something that happens actually quite a lot in Spain, okay, where I used to teach, is that a lot of schools, they, for maybe a couple of weeks in a month, every other week, for example, they teach the subject teacher teaches their subject in English, for example. So when I was working at this school in Spain, we had the maths teacher teaching her lesson in English, okay, every other week. We had the music teacher teaching their lesson in English as well. And this was the students, of course, doing their normal practice, their normal subject, but in English. Okay, so they were picking up words, they were getting to see how English is used in a completely different setting, okay, and making it part of their curriculum, okay, across the curriculum. Okay, again, it could be something quite interesting, motivating for the students. Also, it was quite interesting for the students to see their teachers speaking English, and teachers that they'd never seen speak English before as well. So that was quite nice for the students too. So that was the hard CLIL approach. We also have the soft CLIL approach. Okay, this is the opposite side. Soft CLIL, this is where language dominates. So the balance of the scales shifts. We have more emphasis on language at the front, and content is there kind of in the background. Okay, this is the kind of approach that we as English teachers would be more likely to follow, the soft CLIL approach, because of course as language teachers we are teaching our students language, we're teaching them English. Okay, our main aim is to teach language, but also be able to maybe introduce some kind of content into the lesson. Okay, now this is why in the modern day course book, and you can find this in Right On as well, we have sections typically at the end of a unit that focus on CLIL. Okay, and what they do is they bring together a lot of the topics that the students have been working on already, okay, but they present it through a different subject entirely. So looking at maybe CLIL, a geography lesson, a history lesson, okay, even the science lesson at the end of the unit. And as you can see, the lesson really, we're focusing on language. We have a reading text. We are going to be developing reading skills. At the same time, we're going to be looking at some vocabulary, but we're going to be doing it in a more specialized kind of way. We're looking at English through the lens of geography, for example, through the lens of history or science, for example. So the students get to engage with content that they wouldn't maybe normally be engaging with, something that can be maybe quite interesting for them. As teachers, no matter how good we are as teachers, and I'm sure that you are all fantastic teachers, our students, not all of our students are going to say that English is their favorite subject. Okay, it's impossible. Okay, our students are going to have different interests, different ways of seeing things. Okay, but what CLIL does, it allows them to make this bridge between English and other subjects. You may have students that really enjoy history, and they get the chance to study history in their English lesson. It's going to be a lot more motivating for them. This is what I was talking about earlier with this idea of motivation, for example. Okay, so it gives us a lot of different avenues that we can go down. And again, helping students to expand their horizons, getting them to increase their general knowledge, look outside of the classroom, look at the world around us, for example, look at real life topics, things that affect us on a daily basis. Okay, now what we normally do in a CLIL lesson in Right On, we get students to interact with content in different ways, okay, in a very scaffolded way, because we can't just give the students all the content and all the language. It's going to be very overwhelming for them. So as we saw with the grammar, okay, we follow pretty much the same approach. You can take the grammar methodology and you can apply some of it to the CLIL that we're doing here. We're breaking down the lesson really into more manageable chunks, beginning with presentation. So in each CLIL lesson, the students have the opportunity to interact with the content first by looking at the pictures, looking at the video sometimes as well, looking at the text, just the titles of the text. What do you think the text is about? What are we going to be learning about today? Have you seen anything like this before? And it gives them the chance to maybe inquire a little bit, infer what's going to happen. So getting them to predict things. This is a very important skill that we can associate with CALPs, okay? Being able to analyze, make predictions, think about the content of different texts, for example, in very simple ways, okay? Ways that can get students to begin thinking about different subjects, different content, for example. So look at these pictures, okay? What do you think the text is going to be about? what do you think we're going to be looking at today? I'll put this question to the audience. What do you think the text is going to be about? Disasters, natural disasters. Not the most, not the happiest of topics, okay, but it is a real life topic that we deal with on a daily basis. It's something that we read about in the news. It's something that we watch on television, documentaries. It's something that we study as well. People that are studying science, biology, for example, people that are studying the environment, okay? These are all real life topics that we can bring into the classroom, okay? So getting students to work with pictures, images. We have videos as well that can help us to introduce the content. Let's have a look at a very quick video. So this is something that we can also include in the classroom if we're teaching CLIL, okay? Try and get it as real as possible. So this is something that you can find on the internet. This is something that can be pre-prepared in many of our course books. We have videos that introduce CLIL lessons with documentary style videos. So let's have a very quick look.
Top 10 infamous natural disasters of the last 100 years.
These events prove the awesome and destructive power of nature. Today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 infamous natural disasters of the last 100 years.
I don't think anybody realized how bad it was.
Disaster that wasn't particularly deadly, but was very expensive for the time. 1992's Hurricane Andrew was a Category 4 hurricane that touched down mainly in the Bahamas, Florida, and Louisiana in late August.
Okay, so you get the idea.
Top 10.
So you can maybe introduce your students to the content through video. This is something you can find online. This is something you can have pre-prepared in your texts. This is, again, a way to get them involved in the content with not too much pressure at the beginning, getting them to have a look at the video, simply see if you can name some of the disasters, okay, looking at the pictures, getting some kind of a discussion at the beginning, and then we can sort of move into the text itself, which comes next. Okay, so this is how we normally go through a CLIL lesson, giving students visuals, a lot of visual input first, pictures, videos, discussion, a chance for them to think about what we're going to be talking about, to discuss the topic, and then we can move into the topic itself, and then we can start analyzing the vocabulary and things like that. So again, a scaffolded approach, a presentation stage, then we move more into sort of a reading stage, okay, reading about what we've been talking about already. We've already maybe elicited some vocabulary. We've watched the video, we've kind of established some kind of familiarity with the topic. Then we look into the text itself. You can see here we're working with more kind of academic texts, okay, than we would normally do, and more specialized vocabulary, okay. This kind of vocabulary here, destructive, coastline, climate change. These are kinds of terms that maybe students really wouldn't come into contact with much in our classrooms normally, okay? But this is something that we can introduce throughout our lessons, giving them the chance to read through the texts, of course. And this is where, of course, we can exploit the texts for reading comprehension, okay? So getting students to analyze, evaluate, read a text for specific information, for example. What does each paragraph say, for example? This is something that we can use for the language side, of course, but at the same time, they're practicing language through a more kind of academic text, through a text that is connected to a different subject from across the curriculum. Okay, and what the CLIL lesson also gives us, okay, is the opportunity to expand, always to expand on the topic. Focus on 21st century skills. And again, these are the skills connected to CALP, to these higher kind of thinking skills, getting students to develop real life skills from what they've been learning inside the CLIL lesson. So things like projects, ICT research, learning about something like natural disasters or the environment, it opens up a lot of doors for us for extra research, extra reading, the opportunities to prepare a project about the topic, to prepare a presentation. It allows, all of these things allow collaborative work as well, getting students to work together, to find things out, to use the internet, to research things, or just to read things up in a book, for example. It gives the students the opportunity to develop these real life study skills and academic skills that are incredibly valuable in university or in working life later on. for example. So in every CLIL lesson, we also have this opportunity. Yes, we're focusing on the content, the subject, we're giving the students the chance to further research it, and at the same time develop their language skills through production, through writing about things, preparing a poster, or speaking, delivering a presentation, explaining the project, working together at the same time, social skills. Okay, these are the kinds of things that the CLIL lessons allow us to do, in addition to all of the other lessons that we have throughout our books, okay, that always allow students the opportunities to work together, to collaborate, to prepare projects. The CLIL lessons allow them to do the same kinds of things, focusing on maybe more interesting topics for them, different kinds of subjects that they would never really come into contact with, really, and helping them to get this kind of more global awareness. And this is really my favorite part of the CLIL lesson. The students always get the chance to think about what they've been learning in a different context. Okay, so it does talk about some natural disasters that have happened in Vietnam, for example. Can you think of any, or can you research any natural disasters that have happened in a different country, for example? So it gets students to connect what they're learning in the classroom, again, with the world around them, to have this cultural appreciation, this global kind of expansion in their knowledge. Okay, how does what I've learned today relate to another culture, another country? Okay, I think this is incredibly important for teenagers, for students, to have this kind of global awareness. Helps them to develop empathy skills, helps them develop research skills, understanding this kind of global awareness that interlinks us together. For example, these are things that really are useful in higher education and employment, for example, and getting students to really think about their own reality. Okay, the things that we learn in the classroom, we're not just learning them for the sake of learning them. These are things that affect us on a daily basis. The things that affect us may affect other people differently in different countries, and this is all part of the kind of global awareness that we try to promote inside the CLIL lessons at the same time. Okay, so this is really how, just a very simple kind of approach through CLIL. Okay, building up subject and language proficiency, introducing students to different content, audio, visual, videos, for example. This can really help us when it comes to teaching, delivering our CLIL lesson. Okay, so just wanted to finish with this quote from David Marsh. Okay, CLIL is all about using languages to learn, and I really love that. It's not just about learning a language, but you're using the language itself and using what you know about language to actually learn new things. And I really think that's really the best way to think about everything that we've been doing today, even with the grammar as well. Using language to learn new skills, okay, to be able to actually use what we're learning inside the classroom in the world outside. And I really think that through CLIL, through the way that we can engage students, this can really help them to see the world beyond the English classroom. And this can really help them in the future. It keeps them motivated, expands their horizons. It gives them the opportunity to think about how they communicate, what they need to communicate, and how they can do this, in a more realistic kind of context. Even thinking about how we communicate in our first language as well, it can really help with how we actually see the world, even in our own language, by learning another language, learning different topics, these kinds of things. So this is really what I wanted to show you today when it comes to CLIL, how we can kind of balance it, how it can be used as a window to see the outside world, how it can be used as a tool to motivate and engage students, and at the same time help them develop a wide range of different skills that is going to really benefit them in the future, in their studies, or in their place of work, for example. Now, all of the examples today, they came from our Write On series. Okay, the grammar, the CLIL. Our colleagues at DTP are going to go through this series with you in more detail a bit later on. The idea of this series really is to engage students as much as possible in real life English, to equip them with all of the skills that they need for the challenges of the modern world. Okay, we're talking about things like communication skills. We're talking about things like project work, collaboration, creativity, critical thinking. You can find this throughout all of our books, in every single lesson. We saw in the grammar today, every grammar lesson has a communicative goal. Every CLIL lesson allows students to explore different subjects and project work, and these kinds of critical thinking skills. Okay, it's all delivered to the students in a way that is relevant to them. It allows them to personalize the learning and express themselves, which is, again, something that we love to see as teachers. We love to see our students find their own interests, express themselves in the classroom. And this is really the thinking that has gone into this course, okay, to engage, to motivate, to inspire students through English, through different subject matter throughout the curriculum as well. Okay, so I think I have a couple of minutes left. So what I could do is, because I did notice that throughout the last, when I was showing the interactive whiteboard, there were a couple of comments in the chat. So I just have a couple of minutes left, so I can just show you here, going back into the interactive whiteboard software again. You can see this is a demo version of the software. Okay, so I don't have all of the modules activated at the moment, but you have access to all of the different modules, okay, that you have. If you click into it, you have your whole lesson layout of the module. So you can go into each lesson and you can click around and you can make it as interactive as you want. Okay, you can go through your lesson objectives. For example, if you have things like vocabulary, you have the audio visual presentation of vocabulary. You have it fully interactive. Okay, so you can do this with your students. You have audio as well, and it's just a great tool to engage your students. And whenever you have kind of things like speaking tasks, you always have, as I mentioned before, you have models, you have audio, you have access to videos as well. So you have videos throughout the course.
Special places, big and small.
If you want to introduce things in a different way, different topics through videos, you have everything there. Each video, normally, it comes with questions as well. So comprehension questions, which is fantastic. And also even the opportunity for critical thinking as well. Do you like visiting big cities or small villages? Why? Okay, so it gets students to think about things. So these are just a number of different tools that you can use. My colleagues will be explaining more about this course a bit later, but I really thought I would show you just a little bit of this today, just to give you an idea about what extra kind of tools you have in the classroom, especially when it comes to motivation and engagement of the students, using visuals, having everything in one place, allowing you a very nice kind of lesson flow, different visual tools to engage your students can be really beneficial for you inside your classroom. Okay, and as I said, you have the whole module there. You have your review sections, your cultural sections. You even have things like board games that you can use, videos, quizzes. If you click into the quiz.
It's quiz time.
Okay, so
Team A. Team B. Team A. It's your turn. Read and complete. Hanoi is one of the biggest in Vietnam. A. Cities. B. Villages. C. Wards. D. Districts.
okay, so here you go. I'm just going to go with
Great! The correct answer is cities.
okay, so just lots of interactive ways that you can use with your students, vocabulary, grammar quizzes that you can use there, which is just, again, just an extra kind of tool that you can use for engagement, for revision. You even have the workbook as well, the workbook content. So if you want to go through and correct homework, this kind of thing, everything fully interactive, pronunciation as well, these kinds of things. So it can really help you to focus on even things like pronunciation.
Short.
Okay, so I don't want to take any more of your time because I know my colleagues need to go and do a presentation to you now on the series. So this is just a quick taste, okay, of the series in general. This has been it's been a great experience for me to talk to you today. I hope again that you've got perhaps some new ideas regarding grammar, regarding CLIL, and how to engage your teenagers in the classroom. I'm going to be back in about half an hour for questions, and I'm going to give the floor now to our local representative. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to see you very soon.